That's like a Tammy Wynette song.
Yeah. I bet Coach could break into a little Tammy Wynette if we asked him to.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, we get him
live on YouTube.
There we go. Yeah, do it now, Coach. Do it now while everyone's watching. Hey, everybody, welcome to the UGA Sports Live podcast. My name is Roddy DeBulsi. I'm joined by Dane Young, Jake Roos, and, of course, the Hall of Famer himself, Jim Downing, former head coach of the University of Georgia Bulldogs. And we have a actual football game to recap and one to look forward to. It is the greatest time of year. I just can't tell you how happy we were. Even though if you're with us for the watch-along party at Coach Downing's house this past Saturday, you know how frustrated we and the rest of the Bulldog Nation were watching that first half of that game. Just the absolute pull out your hair frustration of watching Georgia sputter and just shoot itself in the foot over and over again. You knew that there'd be some rust thanks to all the missing spring and some of the COVID issues, but you didn't expect them to be that rusty. But Georgia got together, covered the spread like I said they would, but they did a much better job and came back strong. So our shout out to Georgia for winning that game. And now things get a lot harder. So, Coach, let me just go right to you. We have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to quick couple thoughts from you before we start diving into all these questions we got.
Well, certainly the penalties put you in a position where regardless of what kind of team you are, to put you behind the eight ball, and that's what we couldn't get any rhythm on offense. And fortunately, we had a great kicking game in the first half, and our defense stepped up. They had one bust there that cost us, but overall, glad to get the victory, and knew we were going to struggle in the offensive line. You know, I saw this morning, I think maybe you might have tweeted out, Solomon McKinley's played like 120 snaps for the NFL team in the Miami Dolphins, giving up 4 pressures, no sacks. He's our left guard, our left tackle starting for the New York Giants. Our right guard is trying to get eligible for University of Tennessee, and our right tackle is playing for the Tennessee Titans. So, you know, we have some replacement to do, and certainly we got some good young players vying for that position and those positions, but it just wasn't anything like everybody expected, because everybody probably overrated us a little bit. But I tried to tell everybody we were going to struggle a little bit offensively, but I think the main thing for us is we learned a lot about we got a young quarterback that could come in there and give us some composure when we needed it under adversity. We got another young quarterback that has a ton of talent when he gets some help out there. And now we got another one who's been cleared to play that probably is going to be in the mix down the road. I don't know if he'll be ready this week. Particularly with our offensive line, you got to be careful about putting an immobile quarterback behind, especially one that's got a bad, not a bad knee, but a knee that's kept him from playing. So looking forward to playing Auburn Tigers. We've got their number. We've had their number. Kirby's had their number. And we're going to keep having their number this week here in Sanford Stadium.
Coach touched on something that I want to ask you about, Dane. This question comes from UGA Alum 95 on Twitter. He says, just how bad was Georgia's offensive line Saturday, and should they leave Warren Erickson at center and start him there? What do you think, Dane?
Yeah, what they did with Trey Hill was interesting, right, where he did move over to guard, and we knew that had been worked on in the summer and early in the fall. A lot of people were talking about Georgia's offense kind of getting going when Stetson Bennett made his appearance. Coinciding with that was having the offensive line shifted around. And that was a big piece of what Matt Luke was trying to do. We noticed it in the second quarter, and then it kind of went on from there. Warren Mcclendon did a really good job when he came into the game. According to PFF, he was Georgia's highest graded offensive lineman, and he wasn't one of the starters. And so, yeah, I think that every spot on the offensive line right now is up for grabs, because Georgia does not have time to kind of determine who can hold this spot the longest. I think Georgia's got to figure this out quickly, because the season can get out of hands if your offensive line is not where it needs to be. The talent's there. This is all about experience. These guys are really good football players, but there's just not a lot of experience on that line other than Trey Hill.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say that, Dwan Mathis kind of had the deer in headlights thing. I don't really see that. I don't agree with that as much. I mean, I know, yes, you look at that, what was that, 3rd and 12, and he runs for gets a long run and comes up a yard short when he probably could have made the first down. He got hit a couple times, but it seemed like every time Dwan Mathis was getting started, there was a holding penalty or a blocking penalty or something like that. It just seemed like he was sabotaged. Again, they kept shooting themselves in the foot. The poor kid just couldn't get everybody to work on the same page with him out there. And I think that too many people are putting too much blame on Dwan Mathis. Kirby Smart made that same point over and over again. I think Coach Donna nailed it. That Coach Donna, while we were in our watch along show,
All right.
What a great point from Roddy.
Yeah. I like the freeze, though. That's pretty nice. Coach, while Roddy's reconnecting here, I
would bring in Stetson Bennett.
There you go.
Yeah, I want to point out one thing here, and you asked me this question, but one of the reasons you have me on here is because I've coached some, maybe not as much as I needed to, but I've been around quarterbacks a long time and studied them, trained under some good coaches, visited with Bill Walsh, Joe Gibbs, all the great quarterback gurus over the years, and talked to them. And one of the things that I have a little bit of advantage on our fans, particularly now because our fans didn't get to watch any spring game, any scrimmages, anything. I didn't watch a spring game, or we didn't have one, and I haven't seen the scrimmages. But I have seen Dwan Mathis for 3 years now, almost 3 years, 2.5 years, however how long he's been there. And I can guarantee you, anybody can step back and throw the ball 60 yards like he did with one step to George Pickens in the end zone, or run around the edge like he did, or win the quarterback job with Kirby Smart and Todd Monken having the choice of who to pick. Let's don't be too quick to jump away from this guy. Let me just tell you, there's a reason why he won the job. So, and part of it is the rest of our team. We have some weaknesses on our offensive line that we've got to work around, and his mobility is going to help us there. And Stetson showed that when he was in there jumping around in the pocket. So I just want to, all you fans, I got a lot of my ass left, so get on me if you want to, but I'm telling you, don't shortchange Dwan Mathis right now. Please don't do that.
Coach, what I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned the mobility, and obviously Stetson and Dwan both able to kind of showcase that on Saturday. JT is now the big storyline heading into the Auburn game, being cleared. What's the difference, though, I guess, between being freshly cleared and being a full go? I mean, is there a distinction to make there? Are you saying this guy's healthy enough to play, or is it saying, hey, we feel like this guy can shoulder the load?
Yeah, I think listening to Kirby yesterday, went through all the things that they had to do to test him to make sure he could handle it. And I think, but by saying cleared, that means he can play if they feel like he gives us the best chance to win. And I guess that's what they're going to look at this week, looking at Auburn's team, looking at the way that Wilson kid moved around in the pocket against Auburn last week, but he also got sacked a lot too. I think he had 4 sacks. So we're going to have to look at that and also see, how JT, he's been away from football all fall as far as contact. I mean, he hasn't had any. So, but, the unknown factor is something everybody jumps on, and you heap in the pile the fact that Dwan had the first half that he had. So, but kudos to Bennett. There's another thing that I got caught a lot of crap about talking about Bennett. People said he couldn't play good enough to win a game. Well, I guarantee you he's my hero for what he did last week.
Yeah, guys, we caught a lot of grief last week, and again, I love it. I love the grief. I love the complaints. I love the promotions. I love the folks who are engaged with the show. It makes me happy. So if you've got comments, please put them in the YouTube feed there. If you're watching us on Facebook, put them in there, or hit us up on Twitter and ask your questions. We've got a bunch of them to get to. But one of the biggest ones we got last week was, why in the hell are you guys spending so much time talking about Stetson Bennett? And basically, when we went into the show, we're like, we know who the number 1 quarterback is. We've been telling folks for weeks it's Dwan Mathis. So there's no We've spoken about him at length, but who's the number 2? And that's one of the greatest questions in all of football for every football team in America is, there's nobody who's more beloved than the backup quarterback, because when the first guy's struggling, everyone wants to know who the second guy is and bring him in. So we talked about Stetson Bennett, and we gave him a lot of credit, and sure enough, he turned out to be pretty good. He might be your starter this weekend. Dwan Mathis may be the starter. We don't know. I think those were the guys who were taking the primary snaps with the number 1 offense yesterday. Wouldn't surprise me if JT Daniels gets in there. We know what he can do. We know he's pretty talented, but that's going to remains to be seen. But I do want to give, like I said, give a little credit to Stetson Bennett for a guy who never thought he was coming back to Georgia, who came back, and in that first scrimmage, we heard about JT Daniels, Dwan Mathis, and Jamie Newman all taking snaps with the number 1 offense. The Carson Beck working with the number 2s, and Stetson Bennett working with the number 3s. And I think everybody in America wrote Stetson Bennett off, and it's just a great story there. Jake, I know we got a ton of questions. How do you want to go about this? You just want to do them by which one you like the most, or which one?
I'm gonna go with the ones I like the most. That's my preferred method.
Hey, before you do that, I want to tell you something that I like the most. And I got an email from Your Pie talking about new pizzas they have and new items on their menu. And I got to tell you about this one, Jake, because you're just going to die. They have a hot honey pepperoni pizza. So you take your crust, you add marinara, pepperoni, peppadew peppers, house pickled jalapenos, feta, mozzarella, fresh basil, and you drizzle all that with Mike's hot honey. Yeah.
I'm with it.
Yeah. They also have a new sweet heat pepper pasta that's going to be pretty amazing, and kicking pepperoni sticks. So I'm just telling you, the hot honey pepperoni pizza at Your Pie that's just an absolute killer. So go to the Your Pie app. Look, they have all the different pizzas on there. Check it out. And I also want to mention one of our new sponsors, DR Construction and Maintenance. That's our friend Ronnie Brown, who's always sending in questions to the show because he has good questions. And, when I asked Jake, the reason I bring this up is when I asked Jake, hey, which questions do you want to ask? We get a lot of questions, but we usually try to pick the ones that are the most interesting. And Jake and I sometimes argue over which one's the most interesting, which one isn't. But he's got that's why we let Jake do it, because he's got a better feel for that. But Ronnie Brown always sends good questions, and now he's advertising with us, and we appreciate that. That is, he's picked up a few new jobs. So if you were in Liberty County, now everybody knows where Liberty County is. If you're in Bryan County, everybody knows where that is. Even if you're in Long County, which I have debated the existence of on previous shows, but apparently Long County is a real place, and Long County is one of the areas that DR Construction and Maintenance services. So if you reach out to Ronnie Brown at DR Construction and Maintenance, think about it. You've been at home with all this COVID stuff. You need work on your house. You need reconstruction done. You need construction done. You need stuff like that. Check our friends at DR Construction and Maintenance, Ronnie Brown, and they will take care of you. Well, hit us up with some questions, Jake, while I knock into these chicken tenders brought to me by the folks here at Classic City Eats.
Well, Ronnie had to be excited for that work that Richard LeCount was putting in the other day. So
Liberty County.
Shout out to Liberty County for sure. Jay Cheek here with a good one for Coach. He says, everybody's focused on the quarterback position and who the starter will be moving forward. But what do you think is the biggest key to fixing this offense moving forward? Is it about getting continuity there, Coach? Is it about that offensive line? I mean, what's got to take place, I guess, for this group to take the next step in the direction they want to go?
Well, you got to establish some rhythm in your offense, and that starts with the discipline of eliminating penalties when you're struggling, and you're, it's just like anybody. When you expect to do well, you're going to probably do well because you feel good about your base and you got a good idea about what you're going to do. But when you're doubting yourself a little bit and things keep piling up, then you have a tendency to say, here we go again. And that's what we got to get away from, because we've certainly got some potential. There's no question. You look at all the different people out there, but I would say as far as the number one thing is develop the offensive line where we're not having to play musical chairs in there. I mean, these guys got to be able to communicate, do that. And with that, establish who the quarterback's going to be, between those two. And then if all of a sudden JT does a great job this week and these two don't, and he's the guy, then you're going to probably change your style a little bit and go to more like we used to play last year with the power runs and the RPOs and things like that, and not worry about the quarterback keeps and things like that. So, but I would just say overall is, we're going to be playing at home. We know we got a good edge on Auburn over the last few years, and just reestablish the fact that we can't beat ourselves. That's the number one thing. You can't beat yourself in a game like this.
Yeah, I think coming out the gate, that was something I said the other day. Even once Georgia had it kind of locked up, you can't afford that same start against Auburn. I mean, that's too talented of a team. If you commit that many penalties, I think you'll be in a hole early on. But you spoke about that offensive line continuity and developing some guys there. Bear Dog 50 over on the vent at UGASports.com says, I've always thought that offensive line continuity is very important. I think I remember seeing Kirby suggest that in the past, that he doesn't really buy into it. Do you think that we need to pick 5 guys and roll with them unless somebody is obviously playing bad? It kind of, I guess, talking about, going against musical chairs, do you just go with 5 and roll with them, or do you take your chances and start bumping these guys around at the sake of continuity?
Well, that was a good question, and it covers a lot of bases. But in the case of right tackle, it went right down to the last week about who was going to be the right tackle between Mcclendon and Condon, and Condon won the job, but not so much that he was an overwhelming favorite. And when he had some struggles in the first half, Mcclendon got the shot, which he should have, kind of like when Bennett came in for Mathis. So, you don't have the benefit of a lot of veteran players there. Ben Cleveland does some really good things head on, coming off the ball and all, but he's had some issues on pass protection. I mean, that's been well chronicled. So you add the two together on the right side, and I don't know how bad the calls were as far as somebody missing a call or something like that, because it might not have been Ben, but we just got to me, coaching quarterbacks, we got to get some easy plays to build some confidence, where you throw in some screens or you're throwing some delays or anything just to get some rhythm, where every play's not life or death like it was in the first half the other day. It was like, what are we going to do next to stumble, or what are we going to do? So, but hey, Auburn's not any pretty packaged here coming in here either. They can't run the ball. I think the real key in this game, and we're talking about Auburn a little bit ahead of the scheduler, which team can run the ball good enough where the quarterback can have some protection. Because I guarantee you, if Auburn doesn't run any better than they did against Kentucky, our defensive front's going to be in Nick's face all night. I mean, and we'll have a lot of good pressure on him. So same thing with us. We can't go 50 yards rushing against Auburn and expect to win. I mean, we got to run the football.
Go to that idea, Coach. You mentioned, make some easy plays, kind of ease your quarterback into it, give him a chance to build some confidence. It seemed like every time we turned around, Dwan Mathis was facing, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12, just some tough situations there. You got a coach on the other side who knows your offensive line personnel perfectly. He knows their strengths and weaknesses. I'm sure he conveyed that to the defensive coordinator, saying, look, this is how to get after him. He also knows your quarterback. He knows your team. From a play calling standpoint, though, it looked kind of like when you brought in the second half. In the second half, when you brought in Stetson Bennett, it seemed like there were some easier plays. Was that just a perception, or was it just that things were clicking better? But it looked like they called some easier things for Stetson Bennett to run that, in my, limited experience, seems like that would have been a good play call for Dwan Mathis as well.
Well, I think they have the same plays for both guys, but
Okay.
Stetson came in there early and we went 3 and out twice too, but we got that drive at the end of the half, which was huge to get that 3 on the board and build up a little bit going into halftime. But, we can rehash all this back and forth, but the big thing is Stetson has a little bit better feel for game experience as much as he's played. And you got to remember, he's gone against the number 1 defense in the country or among the number one defense in the country. It was last year, but for 3 years,
It's true.
he's been on the second or third team going against those guys and having to run for his life back there with whichever offensive line, whether it's scout team or first team, second team, whatever it might be, but all that pressure we get. And it's helped him. And you saw him jump around and make some throws. And Dwan did the same thing, but he just didn't. He had one dropped, which would have made a first down. That was a tough call for Washington to catch it. And then he had a bad read and threw the ball behind Burton in the red zone. So, but hey, I don't want to get nitpicky here, but I just feel
well, no, you're answering the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel good about this though. You go to the game with all 11, and I feel good about our kicking game and our defense right now. And now we knew going into the season, people got on me for 2 straight weeks for talking about our offense was going to struggle. Now maybe they'll believe me. I didn't think it'd struggle like that, but we're gonna get some big plays, and we're gonna start getting some rhythm. That's what we got to get. What we got next here?
Yeah, rhythm, definitely a question that we're getting here about the offensive line. This guy wants to know, Rug Slanger over on the dog vent. He says, I know we're missing a lot of pieces, but it seemed like there were some missed assignments on the offensive line. Is this something we can get fixed, or are we in trouble up front this season?
Well, you give credit to Odom. He's a veteran defensive coach. He's played against Georgia 4 times as a head coach, and he went against head coach Pittman, talking to him about some of our personnel. So they did a lot of things to make up for some of the inefficiencies on their defense, which I would do too if I was, particularly outmanned and hadn't won many games like Arkansas had. And so they did a lot of line twists. They moved around their perimeter defense, brought outside pressure off the edge, and sometimes we handled it and sometimes we didn't. But the biggest thing, we didn't run enough plays to get any continuity or to build any real good fluidity with the offense. Second half, we did that. But I would say the answer to the question, we got to be able to handle that stuff, because unless you prove you can, they're going to keep doing that. But the bad part for the defense is if you pick that up and they play man coverage, and they doubled George a lot in the game, but when they played him man on one side, he ate him up. So what we got to do, these other guys got to step up and catch the ball when they throw it to them.
Yeah, that's actually the next thing I was going to bring up to you, Coach. This was a good one from QFlow11, dog. I thought this was a very interesting question, and probably one that'll rile a few fans up. So he says, I know everyone's going to talk about mistakes on offense. He said, but I saw several plays with wide open receivers and potential big runs if blocks weren't missed. It could just be me, but I thought it was one of the best called games by UGAOC in a while. Coach, am I crazy to think that we're going to have a good offense this year?
I don't think he's crazy. I really think we're going to build it up. We're going to build depth in the offensive line. These younger offensive linemen are going to get better. I'm talking about Jones and Radledge and Van Pran and all those, and they're going to get some experience, hopefully. And the starting guys and the backups are going to get better too. But we're going to get McKitty back at tight end. I thought the tight ends did a good job. Fitzpatrick and Washington did a good job. But McKitty's this veteran guy that's played in a lot of big games for FSU, and he'll be another threat that we can utilize. We basically played that game with 2 of our top 4 receivers out. We didn't have McKitty and we didn't have Blaylock.
Yeah, right.
So, hey, come on. That's no excuse, but that's the reality that you've got to – these other guys have got to step up. We were playing a freshman in Burton, and we're playing a freshman at tight end in Washington, who last year was playing out in Las Vegas against guys that I can guarantee you nobody's got 2 taller tight ends than we got in Fitzpatrick in Washington. Those guys look like NBA guys out there.
They're big boys. Hey, Dane, I noticed that right as we speak, Gus Malzahn is hosting his press conference, normal weekly one. And he says this on Facing Georgia. We're looking at a team that's just overall the most talented team in the SEC. And then he says about facing Georgia's offense, says it's a big task for us. But I'll tell you this, our guys are extremely excited about going there and playing Georgia. He says on Georgia's rushing defense, he said, you're looking at not just one of the best, if not the best rushing defenses in the country. They make you earn it, and that's the key. So I know as Jake's going through the questions there, I want to ask you this one. Any of that stand out to you? I mean, I don't think that's really just so much coach speak. I mean, he's right. Then Georgia is one of the most talented groups out there. Back to back recruiting champions, if you will. If there's a trophy for that, I don't know if there is, but he's right about his defense has to be a little excited about facing Georgia's offense because you saw some of the fits and starts. But that Georgia rushing defense is pretty lights out. Now, you and Brent did the Film Don't Lie article yesterday where you broke down the good and the bad. How much of what Coach Malzahn is saying is coach speak, or how much of it just sounds, to me, it sounds pretty accurate?
Yeah, it sounds like he's just being candid, right? I mean, we said in Film Don't Lie that Georgia's defensive line is as good as it's been under Kirby Smart in his era at Georgia. Now, that's because of Jalen Carter. That's because of Trayvon Walker. They both made just a couple of unbelievable plays, just single-handed dominations of offensive linemen in the SEC. That was a man's game, and Auburn's going to have to face that this week. I'm at the stage in previewing Georgia-Auburn where I wonder, how does Auburn score on Georgia? Because like Coach said, Auburn struggled running the football, and it took a lot of Kentucky mistakes for Auburn to get the points that they had on the board. I do think Auburn's receivers are a challenge that Georgia definitely did not face against Arkansas, and probably may not face until they play Alabama. And then beyond that, maybe nobody else has receivers like that in the SEC. Seth Williams is a bona fide stud, and he will be an NFL guy. Anthony Schwartz, when you have that kind of speed, if that gets behind your defense, I mean, come on, it's just going to be hard to keep up with that. Conversely, Georgia has to prove that it can score on Auburn. And yeah, Auburn's defensive front, not as strong probably, but the middle of the defense and the back half of the secondary, probably stronger than it was last season for Kevin Steele, which, I mean, as much as Gus Malzahn's offense has struggled against Georgia, Kevin Steele's defense has done a pretty good job against Georgia the last couple of years. I think this is going to be one of those low-scoring barn burners, 2016, something like that, and you're just hoping Georgia gets on the right side of it.
Coach, give me your – I know you will do a deep dive as the week progresses into Auburn. Can you give me your overall view? You say that, Kirby's had his number, and he has. Georgia's had Auburn's number a lot lately. I mean, 8 of the last 10? I think saw something on the dog vent where – the last 4 or 5 times that Auburn has come to the state of Georgia, they've scored 10 points, 7 points, 7 points, 7 points, 7 points, something like that. I haven't looked it up, but it did not look good for Auburn's offensive production in the last number of years where they've actually visited the state of Georgia. Kind of give me your overall thoughts as we continue here.
I watched that game because our game came on at 4:00, so I had a chance to really study it. And Kentucky got to be kicking themselves in the butt losing that game. They had all kind of opportunities, had unbelievable amount of third down conversions. They did so many good things, but just couldn't put the ball in the end zone and didn't capitalize on great field position. And Auburn, as Dane mentioned, is making up for their lack of dominance up front by moving their linebackers around and mixing up their coverage. Steele's a good coach. I mean, he knows what he has, and he's going to try to confuse us too. They're going to walk people up in the line and then JoJo them out. That means line up and then get back out, and they're going to try to confuse us. But I think the real paradox here is they're trying to develop more of a passing game under Chad Morris, and maybe they will. But I think how much is he going to be patient and try to run the ball against Georgia like Gus would, no matter what? And Gus is the head coach, but if he gets into a throwing it all the time type deal against us, I hope he does, because we should be able to get after Nix pretty good. And Nix is a up and down quarterback. I think last year, I mean, he's really good. When he's really good, he's unbelievable. But on our show on Thursday, Dane and Brent Rollins were both talking about how many turnovers and non-touchdown plays he had in their losses last year. And that's what we got to do is pressure him, and he'll throw the ball up. But he's definitely improved. But I think our kicking game is going to help us too. Our punters punting lights out. I was glad to see Podleski Leslie kicked the ball like he did, and we had great return yards. You realize we had 140 yards. That's 14 first downs. That's more than we made on offense, I think. We had 14 first downs on return game. That's great flipping the field. So Auburn notoriously has had a pretty good kicking game. We'll have to see how that reacts. But I would just tell all dog fans, I'm telling you, I like our shot against Auburn. I like our team because I would a whole lot rather be coaching our team off of us, not necessarily playing quite that bad in the first half, but not going down there and beating them 60-0. I mean, we got a lot of things we can rectify here and coach up between the first game and the second game, but we'll see what happens.
If you want to rectify something, rectify how you watch this game this coming week. Be sure to tune into the UGA Sports Watch Along Party. We had a very good premiere outing this past Saturday. Thousands upon thousands of people were watching the show, but we want millions, tens of millions, billions of people tuning into the show this Saturday. If you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, it's really easy to find. Just worst case scenario, put a search in for the UGA Sports YouTube page. You'll find the Watch Along show there. Coach was calling plays before they happened. He was calling substitutions before they happened. I really think he's from the future. He's already seen this game and just came back to tell us what was going to happen beforehand. It was freaky. It really was. I'm not trying to be mean, Coach, call you freakish, but you're calling here's a quarterback draw. He's going to roll out to his right here. Rolls out to his right. I'm like, it was tough. But worst case scenario, if you're not doing the watch along show and you want to go someplace, you want to get out of the house and watch it, swing by our friends at Academia Brewing Company because they did this last week. They had the giant screens up, with the projectors on, and they're showing the games there. You can get all their fantastic beer, all their fantastic food, and one of the cleanest places out there. And they've got a couple new beers out there that you need to try out. They have their Fest beer. It's a German-style lager. They're selling it in 4-packs now. It's one of those things it's a German style that you could drink all day long. It's very packed with flavor, but light enough that you can make a day of it because it's a 7:30 game. You're gonna have to pace yourself. You can't start drinking those heavy beers right off the bat. They also have GPA is hitting the shelves this week. And it's a very refreshing hoppy beer that I think you'll like. It's they got 12-ounce cans that are going to be with silver tops all over the place. So be sure to check out our friends at Academia Brewing Company for all their fun beers and good food and just a great place to watch the game. So check them out when you get a chance. And again, I also want to mention one of our other sponsors before we go back to Jake and his questions. Irvin over at Masada Leather and Gifts. We're at the end of September. We're going to be into October. You need some fall fashions. You need some fall Christmas gifts. You need the holidays are coming up. So reach out to our friends at Masada Leather. They have belts, bags, custom sandals, Birkenstocks, just some amazing products when you go out there. Now, don't go downtown. Go to 5 Points in Athens. They're next between the Royal Peasant and Earth Fair. You walk right in. Lifetime warranty on all their custom work. Good place to get stuff repaired. So if you want some of the fantastic belts and bags they have, guys and ladies gifts, custom sandals. You want some really good sandals to wear, swing by our friends at Masada Leather and Gifts and tell them that the folks at UGA Sports said hello. All right, Jake, hit us up with some questions while I eat fries.
Well, we got a question here from ZXBY140. He's always sending in some good ones on the vent at UGASports.com. He wants to know about the offensive line. How do you see it shaking out this week? Who gets the start, Coach? I know you mentioned Owen Condon and Warren Mcclendon kind of fighting things out into the last bell. Obviously, there was some movement with Trey Hill and Warren Erickson. How do we kind of see this thing shaking out this week? Who ends up with those spots? Is it going to be more based on practice or based on that game performance?
I think a little bit of both. Based on the way they played, Mcclendon probably edged him out in the game, but there had to be a reason why Condon started too. So I don't think you just ship him out. I think they'll probably look at both of them hard this week, and both of them will get a shot against Auburn. Who's going to be the next guy inside? Whether it's we saw Schaefer play most of the game, so if we have to move Hill to guard to sub, but we're going to have a chance to dress out a few more guys here we're not going to be able to dress out like an unlimited amount. I think they can only dress 80 for the COVID at home now. So we only took 10 linemen. I know Clay Webb had an injury in his ankle. Maybe he'll be ready to help at guard too. So, I just don't know enough about it to be definitive to say who I think, who I know would be starting, but it's going to be, I guarantee you they're going to work them hard, and they're going to see how they get in the briar patch, and whoever shows the most progress will be the one that starts. And then if it doesn't work out, then they put the other guy in.
Dane, what are your feelings after going back and watching the film? You and Brent had a chance to kind of break these guys down, look at the PFF grades. How do you kind of see it shaking out?
That first half, Owen Condon's going to get some of the criticism because he was the one that got pulled, and there was a couple just easy things to see where he let his guy get to his outside shoulder and cause pressure in the pocket. But the same thing happened to Jamari Sawyer on the left side. I mean, it was pretty much a unit failure, and really you could kind of spread that and say for the entire offense, right? But specifically on the offensive line, that first half, they did not protect well enough in the run game, where Zamir White did not have a gap to gain 2 yards. I mean, Zamir White should be able to get 2 yards on any single play that he touches the football. And so that's a failure from the protection, and maybe even a failure in his commitment, I guess, to find his spot on the line to best go through. I mean, Ben Cleveland did have one spot, we put it on Film Don't Lie, where he pushed probably 2 guys 7 yards down the field in the middle of a pile. So, I mean, the talent and the strength are there. To me, it was kind of maybe a lack of comfort. You definitely saw the penalties get out there. Let's not discount that these guys had to travel to Arkansas for this game, and that was different for a lot of them, especially under the circumstances of traveling in a pandemic. So, yeah, they weren't comfortable the first half. I think that was pretty obvious, but I think there are a lot of reasons for that. And sometimes a little home cooking, just being near where you put your head at night, is enough to rectify things. And we'll see if that's the case against Auburn.
One good thing about Ben, too, is that he's had some good games against Auburn.
That's a good point.
He came in there and did a heck of a job. So he's got that confidence level, too, and he can show some leadership and tell these guys, look, I've been around when some of these older guys these guys that played with me that are gone now had some of these situations happen to them. I mean, you get exposed. Everybody can't be perfect at the, you're not going to, these good athletes. And like I said, Coach Odom gave them a lot of looks there, and they ganged up and dared us to throw the ball early just to try to stop the run. That's just what you're going to do. I mean, and we didn't have enough first downs to really do a whole lot with it. When you do throw a ball on first down and you don't hit it, hard to run it and make 10 yards on the next 2.
Now, if Derek Brown was at Auburn for this game Saturday, I'd be a bit worried, not going to lie. But he's not there, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, sure.
Or Marlon Davison. Yeah, either one of them would. That's going to make you a little bit nervous. Well, the good news is you get Ben Cleveland back next year, don't you? I mean, this year doesn't count, and I think he has gained permanent offensive line status at UGA. He's been here for 12 years, so
he's just going to matriculate into the O-line coach. I mean, he's just going to succeed into that position at some point.
Did nobody ask him what it was like to be on that national championship team in 1980?
He'll get a doctorate in O-line.
Dr. Cleveland, yeah, and I do want to give him credit because he got a lot of grief last year, but he is a guy who has fought and earned his spot and been back and forth. I do think that a lot of people are giving Owen Condon a bit of grief about it because they're like, oh look, he got the backside pressure, came around and got to Dwan Mathis. Dwan held on the ball a bit long. There's only so long you can block a guy. So some of that more decisiveness that you guys pointed out in the Film Don't Lie series with Stetson Bennett making quick decisions, getting the ball out fast. I think that all of a sudden the offensive line looked a hell of a lot better, even though I don't know that they were blocking that much better. It's just, they went to the air quicker. There's more decisiveness, and I think that made the whole O-line look stronger.
Another thing that helps you too there, Stetson had the benefit of being on the sideline and listening to Coach talk to Dwan on the headsets about what they were doing. So he went in there already knowing what Arkansas was doing, and Dwan didn't because we didn't know what Arkansas was going to do. So more power to Stetson for taking advantage of that. But that's usually the case. You saw Folk come in at quarterback against the Falcons on Sunday, and look like a different team because he had the benefit of knowing what they're doing. But I don't want to talk about the Falcons because it's going to make me all mad and everybody else. But
please don't talk about the Falcons.
But
for the love of God, don't talk about the Falcons.
Let's get some more questions here.
Well, Roddy, I wanted to ask you real quick, any thoughts on the offensive line, any insight as to who might edge a guy out, or anything you've heard so far about the potential moving into this weekend?
I think getting Clay Webb back is going to be helpful. I don't know, when you put him in, but I said, and Coach pointed out when we were I don't know that we were down on the team, but we were just trying to temper people's expectations. When Coach was pointing out you had 8 different players from last year's team playing in the NFL, last year's offense playing in the NFL this year. You see Charlie Warner out there, making plays. It's like, oh yeah, he was on the team last year. He's in the NFL now. And you don't have the experienced tight ends. You don't have a DeAndre Swift who can make up for a bad offensive block, a bad offensive lineman, guy with that kind of cutting ability. He makes things look better. I think when you start working out this offensive line, you're missing those tackles, as coaches pointed out. You're missing some guards. And I thought Georgia's strength would still be its interior center. I think getting Justin Schaefer back was big, and Trey Hill was going to be solid in his second year working at center spots. And Ben Cleveland, with all his experience, I thought your interior offensive line was going to be stout. And that wasn't quite the case Saturday. I mean, there were still a lot, but there were some issues. And then, to move Erickson in and Trey Hill out, I like that. I remember Jake and I talking about how we were kind of shocked that Trey Hill was going to be a center just because he's so big. It's like, how do you get that ball between those giant thighs? So him moving over to guard, which we thought was his natural progression, and then backing them up, was a guy like Clay Webb. So, if your number 2s are Clay Webb and Warren Erickson for that interior spot, and Cedric Van Pran, you're like, wow, that Georgia's interior is going to be great. But it kind of wasn't, and then Jamari Sawyer, when Condon getting beat on the edges, that didn't make you feel good. The guys who are supposed to come in and help you on the tackle spots, your Chad Lindbergh, your Broderick Jones, Tate Ratledge, those guys didn't travel, so they're not ready yet. So I know we're not facing a Derek Brown, or Marlon Davison or the same Auburn defense, but for asking my insights, I'd still be worried about Georgia's offensive line because, I don't know that James Cook, Kenny Mack, or Zamir White can make an offensive line look better than it actually is, as we've seen in the past. Although I do want to shout out, great job, Kenny Mack, on those returns Saturday. That kid is a lightning bolt on kickoffs. And if we've already seen Gus Malzahn, he's obviously concerned about Georgia's kick return game because, as Coach pointed out, 140 yards, that's some good field-changing ability there.
A question here for Coach, and it's interesting because you talked about Nick Foles coming in for the Bears and kind of creating a new look for them. Old Fourth Dog on the vent says, does the OC have a different game plan for each quarterback, or does he have each quarterback ready to execute his game plan? Is it the game plan the same for each, or does just the play calling vary?
Good question.
Well, you've got a repertoire of all these different plays that you practice and install, and then you put them down in distance and all that, field position, everything like that. And all the quarterbacks know all the plays, and all the receivers, everybody know all the plays, but you call the game based on the quarterback's strengths and what he can do. So I think it would be a little bit different for Daniels than it would for the other two, and the fact that you probably wouldn't have, like I said on the get-go here, you wouldn't be doing a whole lot of zone read or quarterback draw or quarterback counter and stuff like that with him, and maybe rolling them out like you do the other two. But other than that, you base it around what your whole offensive team can do, and then after that, you get what your quarterback can do. So a little bit variance by the quarterback, I would say.
Question here.
That's a great question because I we talk about the quarterbacks having different styles, but do you change what you got 10 other guys on there that you bring in a new quarterback? Oh, hey, all these plays we practiced with the starting guy who's a pocket passer, dual threat. Now all of you do this other play, that we didn't practice as much because we had to switch QBs. I thought that's a great question.
The fan reaction, and in some cases the overreaction to what happened with Georgia's quarterbacks, was quite interesting. And I think it's because happiness in life is how you manage your expectations, right? It's why Stetson Bennett's stats from the Arkansas game were nearly identical to Jake Fromm's average stats per game in 2019. So then what was chided as too safe and praised as too safe then is now praised as in control. So I think we all want a quarterback that is going to be pivotal and be a championship team for Georgia, lead to that. But there aren't many of those. And so the teams that don't have those game-changing quarterbacks, they have to have defenses that are probably legendarily good or even hyper-productive on special teams as well. So now Kirby Smart's in this weird spot, right, where he has to pick which avenue to take here. Is it risk mitigation to hide an offense that maybe is a little bit behind and underperforming, or do you pair that with a defense that still did put Georgia last year in a position to win a championship? They were in Atlanta with a chance to go to the college football playoff. It wasn't enough, right, because Joe Burrow and that offense at LSU, but that happens. And so I think every fan wants to be like, let's get crazy, open it up, everything, throw the ball everywhere. But I just don't think that's where Georgia is at this point. And based on film, Stetson Bennett's not that. Dwan Mathis isn't that. JT Daniels isn't that based on the film. And Jake Fromm wasn't either. I guess we'll never know about Jamie Newman. All that to say, I think Georgia fans are probably just a little bit jealous when they look over and see Mississippi State take Mike Leach and an average Pac-12 quarterback and make him an SEC record holder in his very first game. Can Todd Monken do that? I don't know. Let's see.
Costello's not an average quarterback. He's going to get drafted today. And I'm going to check you on that. He's not an average quarterback now.
I think KJ was a 5-star coming out.
Hey, come on now.
I'm telling you, based on his film that we watched for his transfer stuff, his film and his stats were pretty average.
He was going to be the guy we were going to take if we didn't get Newman. I can tell you that. So we were high on him. But hey, it doesn't matter about that. But I do feel like the two teams that everybody has forgotten about that were in the playoffs last year that got their ass beat Saturday because of their quarterback transformation and because of their defensive teams not being able to do much were LSU and Oklahoma. How'd you like to be in that kind of situation today for both of those teams? So I don't know. I think you did a good job of analyzing that, though. But the thing that I would be as a fan here that say, hey, I don't want to see ground and pound and all of that again at Georgia. You're not going to see ground and pound because we can't ground and pound. We can't.
No, you're right.
I wish we could because that would help us, but we're going to have to spread them out, kind of like the Chiefs did last night. Put that guy in space, let him run some counters and things like that. And because we're not going to knock people off the ball consistently. I mean, you're just not going to do that. We found that out last year that when you don't knock them off the ball, it hurts you a little bit, like a team like South Carolina when you don't throw the ball effectively. So not harping on anything except philosophically, we knew what we had to do with our team based on last year, who we lost. And I think Coach Monken has developed that scheme. Now they got to go out there and execute it. And that means protecting the quarterback better and making sure we catch the ball when we're open and making sure we hit the open receivers when they're open.
Hey, Coach, Jake, hold on. I got a question for Coach. I'm going to bring up right after this last commercial break. I do want to mention our friends at Athens Ford. Big sponsors of our show, big sponsors of our podcast, big sponsors of our website. They mean the world to us. They keep us in business, and we appreciate it. You can keep them in business and keep yourself safe if you want to reach out to the folks at Athens Ford. They have you can go online. They'll give you $250 instantly just for going to their website. You can pick your vehicle online. You personalize your payment online. You get the KBB value for your trade and get it pre-approved online. You get a 360-degree real-time walk-around. They'll go right to a vehicle that you're looking at, and they'll walk around it and show it to you. You can schedule delivery, or pick up, if you want to pick it up yourself, schedule it to be delivered to the house. You can even do your any service you need. You can get that scheduled online. You do a video call with a consultant. You got a salesperson out there you want to talk to, do a video call with them, do Skype or FaceTime. Point being, the only time you really ever have to go into this shop is to finalize your vehicle purchase. And 90% of it will be done, if not more. So our friends at Athens Ford, we can give you $250 off just for going to the website. And then if you're a student or a first responder or military, there's like another $500 discount, So check out our friends at Athens Ford for just the best service and cleanest place you'll ever find. And I also want to mention our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors that I thought about just going through and naming all the different places that they cover now, but it's only an hour show. But basically, if you live in Gwinnett, Cobb, Barrow, DeKalb, Stevens, Jackson, Forsyth, Habersham, Dawson, North Fulton, Hall, Walton, Cherokee, Clark, Oconee, White, or Forsyth, they got you covered. So Aaron Overhead Doors, they had a huge ribbon cutting the other day for their new facility. Again, see what advertising with UGASports gets you? No, it's all Ryan Lucia and his just badass group of folks over there who are just absolutely killing it in the garage door business. And so if you need any service repair, reach out to our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. They will take care of you. Coach, this is a question I teased before we went into that last commercial break. Dane got me thinking about it with the quarterbacks that Georgia has available. And I think that you make a great point, Dane, about if you have the same stat line for Jake Fromm and Stetson Bennett, we're all applauding Stetson Bennett for getting a 27-point win, and hey, great job. Whereas people would have been mad that Jake Fromm only went, 20 of 27 or something like that. But when people would ask me about Fromm, I'd always say Fromm will keep you in a game. He won't make mistakes. You'll win the game. But I don't know that Jake Fromm will win you the game. He's not a Vince Young out there. So, Coach, is there a quarterback on Georgia's roster that you hand the ball to and say, hey, we're down a score, we're down 2 scores with 6 minutes left, we're down 1 score with 2 minutes left, go win us this game? Does Georgia have that quarterback on the roster right now?
Yeah, I think Jake could do that too. I mean, he did it a lot, but with that line we had last year, we had the best protection of anybody that I can ever remember in our line last year. Maybe Dane can tell you, we didn't give up many sacks. I know that. But I think all 4 of these guys are certainly capable of being SEC quarterbacks. It's just a case of they're not going to be a guy like Mahomes or people like that can do it by them, without much help. But right. They're going to need some help, and it's going to take a collective unit to do it. They all got good arm strength and can they have the capabilities of being winners for us. But we're going to see we already got 7 SEC teams that have one loss already. And after this week, we're probably going to have maybe only 3 or 4 with only that only have are undefeated. Florida's got South Carolina will play them tough and all that, but Tennessee's got Missouri, so I would say both of those guys are going to be. Both those teams will probably be 2-0 in the East. We got the toughest game of all of them probably. Alabama should take care of A&M. So we got the quarterbacks good enough to win with. I guarantee you we do.
Well, not to win, but can they win it on their own?
I don't know anybody that can do it on their own. Who can do it?
I know your coach is going to say you can't do 111, but you said that they don't have a Patrick Mahomes, but there were times that you just felt that Matt Stafford's like, Matt, hey, against Auburn, I think of his the game that he had against them. It just felt like he was the absolute difference maker. Whereas last year you felt that DeAndre Swift was the difference maker, or the fact that
we don't have a Matt Stafford here, but nobody else does either. We don't. These guys aren't. He's a number 1 pro guy taken, number 1 guy in the draft. I think all these.
Last year you had Andrew Thomas. You had Isaiah Wilson. You had Solomon Kinley. You feel like those are the guys that are getting it done out there.
This is what I just said. We got to have a supporting collective group. Maybe not as many individuals, but more as a group. But not many George Pickens out there. I can tell you that.
And that's my greater point, Roddy, is that I think a lot of Georgia fans are craving quarterback play that is elevated status. And look, you don't find that unless you get the Joe Burrows or the Trevor Lawrences. There's maybe 2 or 3 in college every year. So you can even take all the 5 stars that come out, and it's probably a 50-50 clip at that point if they turn to be those guys. So you have to have that supporting cast around it to have continuity and consistency as a program, because even if you recruit well, which Georgia has, even at quarterback, it's just not going to work out all the time to have a guy that's going to be a top 5 NFL pick.
I think you're right. And I think why the Georgia fans want that production is because they've had those guys come through the system. You had, a Jacob Eason, a guy who at one point was ranked the #1 prospect in the nation. You had Jake Fromm come in a 5-star and, played really well, won a lot of games, left early. You had Justin Fields, who could be that Joe Burrow type guy. He could be that Trevor Lawrence type guy. He was right there with him. He's in that same conversation. He's a Heisman Trophy finalist. You never really got to see what he could do. You get Jamie Newman, who looks like he could be that guy, coming from Wake Forest, opts out. So I think that's kind of whetted the appetite for Georgia fans saying, look, we've had a Matt Stafford. Why does LSU get a Joe Burrow when we recruited all those guys and had them here for 2-3 years and never really got to see that? So anyway, I'll get off that topic and move on to let Jake ask some more questions for the last few minutes here.
Yeah. Well, obviously, everybody wanted to know about going into this weekend, the quarterback situation. M. Canty, UGA, wants to know, he says, do you think we roll with Stetson Bennett because he's got the hot hand? He seems he seems comfortable for now and probably should be allowed to roll with the ones until there's a reason to sit him. Do you feel that there's any reason to go away from Stetson at this point based on what you saw last week? Do you turn back to Dwan maybe, or maybe even lean into JT this weekend?
From my standpoint, if Dwan was good enough to be the starter, you don't necessarily just say Stetson jumps up over him, because Stetson's already proven that he can come in and do the job as a relief guy. So I would definitely give Stetson every bit of chance this week to be the starter as compared to last week. I'm sure he probably was running second team, I guess, because he was the guy that came in for Beck, and Dwan took all the ones. But I would say more than likely, though, you look at both of them this week and see how they look against Auburn stuff, and then it'll be a game time situation to see which one of them starts the game. As far as Daniel, I think you got to see what he can do this week within the framework of his physical capabilities, and if all of a sudden he just jumps up and looks like he's a lot better than what we got there, then you're going to consider him. So, but I still bring up the fact that his lack of mobility has got to be a factor in making that decision because of the line that we have. If we had last year's line, I would say his arm would be very beneficial to our team. You know what I mean? But we don't have it.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Go ahead, Dave.
I just think if JT Daniels is having to plant off that leg or try to avoid a tackle or try to extend the play or extend the pocket, coach is right. I mean, that's a surgically repaired knee that's right at a year since it was surgically repaired, and he's had to do all the rehab, right? So that's a precarious position because you don't want the kid to get injured and have something that could have been avoided from that sense. But even beyond that, Georgia's offense seems like it has tried to incorporate more quarterback mobility since Todd Monken arrived. It seems like that was a priority for Kirby Smart. So if you're going to have a statue back there because of an injury, it may be something that doesn't work out for this week, at least. I don't know.
I think in the case of him, I think he's definitely mobile enough if his leg is okay to, avoid some rush and all that, but he's not enough to make up for, time after time. He won't be comfortable back there with. These guys aren't going to turn into pro blockers overnight. They're going to keep developing everything. The one thing I will say is Todd Monken had a quarterback the other day that passed for 357 yards, I think, in Nick Mullins for San Francisco, who was his starting quarterback at USM when I watched him play. And he's not a whole lot taller than Stetson Bennett. He might be, a couple inches taller than him, but running a lot of the same stuff with Stetson that he ran with Nick Mullins at Southern Miss. And this kid just lit up the Giants the other day. So got to be encouraged about that, aren't you?
Yep. Give Dwan the start.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, give it to him. And here's the thing: don't have 8 penalties in the first quarter.
If that's the case, Roddy, I'm going to give you a couple guys that are going to be crucial for that. It's going to be.
Well, let me ask you this: all those 8 penalties weren't offensive penalties, were they?
No, but there's plenty of them there where you had a nice completion. Then
I know that, but I'm just saying.
Let's call back. You want to get them in a rhythm. You say, let's call plays and make it easier for the quarterback to run some confidence. How about not holding plays? How about on a nice run, it doesn't come back, and he's like, what do I got to do here?
Right. I'm going to give you 5 players that can help Dwan Mathis probably as much as anything right now. John Fitzpatrick, Darnell Washington, Zamir White, James Cook, Matt Landers. I'm going to give you those 5 because if the offensive line is working through some issues, that's where the additional blocking help comes from. And a lot of people wonder, well, how does Matt Landers get on the field with all these talented receivers? Go back and watch how he blocked against Arkansas. A lot of the stuff that Tyler Simmons used to do, Matt Landers did very well against Arkansas.
Well, that's a perfect transition, Dane, because we're nearing the end of the show and you're talking about giving us players. So it's time for everybody to give us a player. Mouth-watering players of the week. Who's the guy that you predict is going to step up and maybe help lead the Georgia Bulldogs to victory against Auburn, if that ends up being the case? Dane, let's start with you. Sounds like you got plenty of guys fresh on your mind.
Yeah, I felt good last week after picking Nakobe Dean, which is going to be the safest pick on the team the whole season based on the way that he played. I'm going to go with a matchup that I think is tough, and I mentioned Seth Williams earlier. I'm going to go with Eric Stokes because this is going to be one of those games that when NFL scouts look at Eric Stokes, they're going to see how did he perform against a guy like Seth Williams. I think he'll hold his own.
That's a good pick. I like that one. Roddy, who you got, buddy?
I'm going with the Tiger Killer, Ben Cleveland. I think that's, when you have questions on the offensive line and some guys are just, everybody kind of got moved around, but sometimes you just need to go behind a big hog, and it's a guy that, he can squat a city bus and he moves those plates and will do so in the game. I think that when it's going to come down to a 3rd and 1 situation and you're going to want to hand it off to Zamir White. And, last year you'd go between your 1st round left tackle and your 3rd round left guard and, let those 2 guys pound it with a tight end out there. Now I think this time you maybe go behind that right guard, Ben Cleveland.
All right. I'm going to go I'm going to stick on the defensive side of the ball. I went with Lewis Seen last week. Felt good about that pick. I'm going to stick in the defensive backfield with Dane as well. And a guy that I thought really played well last week and has a chance to continue that this week, especially given the versatility he's able to showcase out on the field. I'm going with Mark Webb. I think that he played a great game at the star position. Chad Morris is going to get creative with his offensive calls. He's going to try to get those guys in some positions. So you're going to need Mark Webb kind of on an island out there doing what the star does, which is floating around and playing a little bit of everywhere. I think Mark's up to the task, showed that last week, and I like his chances to be a big contributor this week. Coach, who you got?
I did a bad job picking Cook last week. I thought he was going to really smoke it, those guys, and he didn't. But I'm going to go with George Pickens just because of his love for Auburn. I think it'll be a very competitive situation. Everybody knows about how close he went to Auburn. I was being a little facetious there, but we're going to have George come through with a lot of 50-50 balls in this game. And, he's going to try to be competing against Williams on the other side, who's the best receiver and all that. Watch out for Tyson Campbell. He continues to play lights out too. So I'm going to go with George Pickens.
Yeah, Tyson was going to be my other choice if I went defense because I just think him, on a Schwartz or a Seth, there's some great potential there.
See, I just assumed that Coach Donnan was going to go Jalen Carter every single week. That was my assumption.
Well, I guarantee I was right about him, wasn't I?
Yeah, that looked all right.
Animal.
Good debut for the kid.
Yeah.
I was glad to see Warren Brinson too. I mean, that's another guy you like to get off the bus early. I mean, he's a good-looking physical kid. I didn't realize he was going to play that much, but I think he played like 17 plays.
17 snaps, yes, sir.
Yeah. So
I'd like to see Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint with some big special teams plays, and Justin Robinson get out there. The reason I bring that up, Anthony Dasher just posted the freshman report over at UGASports.com, which basically breaks down what all the newcomers did for UGA. So I thought that was it's a pretty neat feature. I think I'll just ask them to do that every Tuesday before we come on the show. That way I can cheat and reference it as we go through it. Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap up?
Like I said earlier, No, go ahead.
I'm just going to say this from an encouraging word here. All of us have been involved with families and been involved with different situations in your life. You just don't love your kids when they do something right.
Yeah.
Now's when we really need everybody to hang with Georgia and know that we're having a few growth pains, and these kids are trying hard, but whoever gets to go to that game, let's be behind the Dogs. That's your team. And I'm a cheerleader for us right now. We got a little adversity, but you know, we got Kirby Smart as the head coach, and they got Gus Malzahn, and both of them are good coaches. But we got Todd Monken, and they got Chad Morris. So I like our chances.
I was just gonna say, apropos of nothing related to Georgia, shout out to Mississippi State. I can't wait to see what they're able to do the rest of this season.
I'm not letting you cover that beat. I know what you're angling for. No. No.
It's gonna be fun, man. I'm telling you.
Bad Jake. No.
They better get some defense down there if they're not going to outscore everybody. And I guarantee you, I'm going to take up for Dane a little bit. That guy's not going to, as many yards as he passed for, he had a lot that he missed. So, I mean, they're notorious for turning the ball over too. So, hey, I think he's going to do a great job.
You got your hand over the mic, Coach.
He's going to do a great job, but I don't think they're any threat to be their top 10 team. Maybe they will be, but we'll see.
Hey, Roddy, did you apply for those Egg Bowl credentials for me yet?
No, you neither. Bad team. Y'all are not going to go cover Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this week's show. Appreciate everybody sending your questions. Big shout out to our friends here at Classic City Eats who've given me this fantastic meal here to knock out for the as soon as we cut off the cameras. I'm just going to go through it like a Wolverine. Also, it's a great place to come watch the show. So watch the game, come watch the show. Of course, we do that each week. But if you want to come watch the game this Saturday, 7:30, check it out. For Dane, Jake Roos, and Coach Donnan, I want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in. And one last shout out to our friend Bill Davis, who passed away recently. Dog C on the message board. He was having a rough time of it. Passed away recently. And he was a avid listener to this podcast, and we just want to give our condolences to Dog B and his family, and let them know that they are in our thoughts and prayers. And hopefully next week we'll be talking to you about a 2-0 Georgia. If not, we'll be taking a hell of a lot more questions. All right.
We'll be talking about 0-4 Falcons at least. So
no Falcons talk. That's verboten.